Now, talking about snakes, this damn python. Not too far from us at Bulgrivier, Bulge River, Bulgrivier in Afrikaans, a friend of ours, Henna, had a general dealer there. If we say general dealer, it means he sold anything from a dead snake to a policeman, whatever, everything. If you look for, if he didn't have it, you didn't need it. Now, one night, his dogs were barking terribly, and silly of Henna, he went out unarmed. Even if he was armed, it wouldn't have made a difference. What happened was when he got outside, he got bitten by a black mamba. What he did not know is that the dogs had already, 4 or 5 of his dogs had already been bitten. He managed to get back inside and told his wife that the mamba had bitten him, and his wife immediately called the police, which were just maybe 500 yards down the road, was the police station from where his store was. Villinell, the policeman in charge, of course, immediately came, picked up Henna and his wife, and they sped with a police vehicle all the way to Alice Ras. And whatever the doctors did, they did it right because Henna made it. But Henna was in a coma for a couple of days. But he says the worst of all was he was in a coma, yes, but he could hear everything that everybody was saying. He just could not react. He could not open an eyelid. He could not move a finger. He could hear everything that everybody was saying, but he couldn't do a thing. But what they came to the conclusion how Henna survived was the snake had bitten 4 or 5 of the dogs. 4 or 5 dogs. So it must have gotten rid of most of its venom. By the time it bit Henna, I'm sorry, we had 2 friends. One was Benna and the other one was Henna. I keep on confusing them. But so the snake had gotten rid most of the venom by biting the dogs. So when it bit Henna, had very little, it didn't have a lethal dose left. Although Henna was in a coma. You know, and that's why we have this adage in South Africa, if a mamba bites you, you have to stay calm. Stay calm as possible. Look for a tree and sit in the shady part of the tree. Lean against the tree, sit in the shady part of the tree, so that when they eventually find you, your corpse will not be bloated and it will fit in a coffin. Yeah, that's what it is. We had good days, social days. We had nice, if it was not dancing, it was partying and whatever. But I was also the head of the Agricultural Society. Tia was the head honcho of the Women's Agricultural Union. So we had quite busy social lives. And I know I was the guy that convinced the community that we have to switch over to electricity and develop the area and have electricity brought in by the Electricity Supply Commission. Okay, long and short, we did that. But I had some serious negotiations to do with the Supply Commission, and I had to go into Johannesburg. Now, my preferred way of travel was my diesel Land Cruiser. I had a Mercedes as well, but I rode with my Land Cruiser. And in those days, we didn't have GPSs or anything like that, but I had instructions of where and how to get to this ESCOM, Electricity Supply Commission. I knew how to get there. Went for the meeting, everything, signed all the papers, blah, blah, blah. But when I wanted to leave, I couldn't find the off-ramp of going back to Maelstrom, Fallwater. I couldn't find the off-ramp on the N1 going back north. I tried here, there, I just couldn't find it. Eventually I said, well, to hell with this. I got out, locked the hubs of the front wheels, put the car in four-wheel drive low, and drove up the embankment up north. Everybody, when I broke the bank, honking at me or whatever, I just honked back. I was on the road and unlocked my hubs, and there I was, drove back to Fallwater. That was another. You can imagine that, driving up this embankment. Oh man. Talking about electricity, they were now cleaning at one stage, clearing brush to bring in the electricity lines and whatever. And I heard a hell of a commotion and screaming and yelling and screaming and yelling. Jumped on my motorbike and drove there. It was not too far, a couple of 100 yards from the house. When I got there was 20, 30 people, and they were all screaming orders. Everybody screaming different orders to me. Turned out to be a bloody python there. And it was not too big. It was about 9 feet tall, 9 feet long. But I grabbed the head and I grabbed the tail end of the thing, by the dew claws. The python I would say, not too far from its tail tip, it has two dew claws, nails, two dew claws. It has to dig in with that in order to constrict. Otherwise, it can't get a grip or do a grip to constrict. And so here I was on the bloody motorbike with the snake one hand and the body coiled all around me. On the other hand, I've got the tail end. Now, of course, I'm on a motorbike and this snake is shitting all over me. Now, if you know what a python, for it to digest its food, it has to rot. So all I have is, besides the bloody snake poop, is all rotten snake poop that's all on me. But I drove back to the barn, to my workshop, my barn, got the snake off me, and some of my laborers saw what I was doing, had this bloody snake off me, and I went into the barn, got the snake off me, closed the barn door, and now they know that the snake was in the barn, which was a miracle. For some reason, none of my tools ever got lost again or stolen, because nobody would go into my barn because I knew there was a python in that barn. Ah, goodness, those were the days. One morning, it was a weekday because I know Tia was at that stage teaching at the Ellis Russ School. Deirdre hysterically called me. Willie had been robbed and overpowered on the ranch, and they tied him up with bloody steel wire and barbed wire. Now, can you imagine, baby, being tied up with barbed wire? I just told Deirdre to call the police and tell them to block off the two access roads going towards Fallwater. One goes via Ellis Russ and one One goes this way and the other one goes that way, going to Farwater and Ellisras. And then I just grabbed my military issue rifle. And when I got to Willie, of course, he was in tremendous shock. He wasn't sure whether he was going to be killed or whatever. And I got some pliers, and I cut the wire off him, the barbed wire, etc., etc. And as I say, luckily Deirdre had called the police in Falwater, and they could make the necessary roadblocks. While I just had Willie undone and calmed down, the police called and said that everything is under control. The one guy they caught and the other two guys were killed, when they tried to crash through the roadblock. But the situation was, and that was one of the first farm attacks in South Africa. One of the first farm attacks. And can you imagine the fear that Willie went through, because they're threatening to kill him, and then they're not going to kill him, and then they're going to stab him with the knives, and then they're going to stab out his eyes and things like that. He was a wreck for a long time. One of the first farm robberies. Now, Willie was a very dear friend of ours. He had probably about 10,000 hectares. Probably 25,000 acres that he ranched on. With cows. He must have had something like 800 to 1,000 breeding cows.
How big was your land holding for cows when you bought your new ranch?
Huh?
How big was your new ranch that you bought?
No, it was 2,500 acres. So. Huh?
That was a large ranch.
Yeah, that is far, but I mean, it's not anything as close as what we had. We had, my dad's place was 10,000 acres. Willie's was 10,000 hectares, 25,000 acres. But anyhow, what I'm trying to say is, Willie knew that I had a large labor force, on the ranch for the crops, later on for the tobacco, etc. And he would always lend me cows that were in lactation, so that we could milk them and at least have something that they could eat their porridge with milk or whatever. Now, upstream from me, you've heard the name before. There was a very good friend of mine, tobacco farmer, Bart Simon. And the blacks called him Mataitai, the maker of plans, Mataitai. That's why I called Tyler Mataitai, because when he was small, you give him chores to do, he could come up with the biggest bullshit stories why he didn't have time to do it. And that's why he got the name Mataitai from me. Now, it was one Christmas day. A wonderful Christmas day, because it rained on Christmas Day. But Bart and Irene and Tia and I, we were supposed to have a barbecue. Not a barbecue, a braai. Barbecue, you'll never see a bloody barbecue patty or a hamburger patty on a South African braai. Never. It's either pork chops, lamb chops, steak, that kind of stuff. But not a patty. Anyhow, and it's grilled over hardwood coals, South African hardwood. We were sitting there, and it started raining, as I say, it started raining. But we were not deterred by that. We just took the barbecue and moved it under the overhang of the roof. So we could still grill, we could still braai. And we were sitting there and standing there having a beer. Bart looked at me and said to me, very philosophical, but it was probably the beers talking by then. He said to me, how do you define success? Maximum money or maximum free time? And I immediately asked, without hesitation, I said maximum free time, because if I have maximum free time, it already entails that I've got taken care of the money thing. So yeah, my answer to that would be maximum free time. Mataitai, the maker of plans. Let's leave it here. I've got now the leopard story that's going to come up now, so we can take care of that later on.
But I want to now qualify how Tyler has changed as an adult, so he doesn't get.
Oh, you're not there, yeah, no, of course. No, we're talking about when he was a pickaninny, when he was 3, 4, 5 years old. Now, I mean, yes, he's a good boy, man. He would help as much as he can when he is asked for help. No, for sure.
So he is still Mataitai.
He's still Mataitai, but that's a term of endearment now. Okay, just make sure that thing recorded. If it didn't record,